I was a wayward lad living in Los Angeles, California. I'd worked very hard to put myself into business. And so my life was focused on business, making money, and I suppose other things as well. I was young, I seemed to be quite well off, I was enjoying life. And then one day, over a period of some years actually, I became dissatisfied of what was happening with me. Life was a bit empty, and I just wondered if there could be more to it. I'd been raised in a Christian home and exposed to Christianity of an evangelical kind, which I didn't think was very appetizing. Maybe that was judgmental of me. So I didn't take much notice of it. There seemed to be no power, and it didn't seem to bear a great relationship with what I knew from my childhood was in the Bible. So I'd ignored Christianity entirely. And one night in 1978, I wondered if it could be true. And I thought I'd better check it out because I was 32 years of age. I doubted very much if it was true, but that would be another scratch it off the list and just get on with life. So I went to a bookshop and bought the only Bible they'd got, which was a paperback New Testament in New English translation or something. I remember it cost $2.95. And I started reading that book that night. I lost track of time. I read Matthew, Mark, and probably I read Luke as well, because I was a fairly fast reader in those days. And it was 3:15 in the morning when I looked at my watch, I had to get up and run a business the next morning, so went to bed. Next night, picked up the book. And this went on for years, for 2 years. And slowly but surely, Jesus started talking to me from the Bible. The first time I read the part where he was walking on the water, that's the day, continuation of the day where he fed the 5,000 men, not to mention the women and children. I sneered. And I said, oh, they've got him walking on water now. What's coming next? That was the first time I read it. But as I would read the words of Jesus, he seemed to know me. And I couldn't understand, how did he know me? And at the end of the 2-year period, I knew that it was the truth. I couldn't intellectually explain how I knew it was the truth, but I knew the only thing to do was to ask him into my life, and I wanted to. But one thing which is pretty topical at the moment is in the middle of this, in 1979, I was in Europe on business, trying to make money. And I was on a train. I got on in Milan, and I was headed for Paris. It was a wonderful train. They had great trains in Europe. It was first class, very comfortable. And eventually the compartment was just this lady and myself. She was somewhat older, maybe around 60 years of age. And I was 33. And we found that German was a language we could communicate in. I asked her how she spoke such good German, because I knew she wasn't German. She was from Czechoslovakia. And she told me she spoke good German because she spent 5 years in Auschwitz. And the next thing out of my mouth is I'm saying, well, how did you survive for 5 years? Because I thought it was a death camp. I knew very little. And she told me about a man called Schindler. I'd never heard of Schindler, except I was at school with a guy called Schindler, so I can remember the name. And then many years later, I see this film, Schindler's List. I asked her, "You must hate Germans." And she said, "No." And she told me a story. She had a job that she had to do in this tower gallery. And the best I can describe it seemed to me to have three sides against a wall. It was a tower, it was a tall building. And I got the impression it was the second and the third floor, but that may be just my understanding. And she had to clean the windows, polish them. And there was a walkway all around these three sides of the windows, and then there was an atrium or a courtyard down below. And when she's cleaning these windows, a young Wehrmacht came in. He was a soldier. I'm not sure if he was an officer, but he was young. And he just got to the camp. And he snapped, "What are you doing here, woman?" And she had to explain this was her job. And while she's explaining, the room started to fill up with soldiers. Again, I'm not sure if they were officers. I got the impression they were. And they went around the windows. They took positions. And then the courtyard filled below with people, including children. And she had seen it before, but this boy, young soldier, had not. And the machine guns opened up from the roof, and they killed every single person. And the boy started screaming, young soldier, "What are they doing? What are they doing? How can they do this?" And this Jewish woman, who would be young, probably the age of the boy, she held him in her arms and comforted him, because he'd never seen anything so disgusting in all his life. And that was her way of saying to me, "No, I don't hate all Germans." And I asked her, "Could there be a God? Do you believe there could be a God?" And she said, "Nein, unmöglich," which means impossible. I never preached at that lady, because myself, I believed in Jesus, but I wasn't yet filled and certain on the inside. But she poured her heart out as we talked, and she told me things, and I would just, if I may end here, she told me the worst thing of all was when you woke in the morning and you'd been dreaming of family and maybe playing tennis or music, and you woke on those slats with a stench. And they were all women, they were segregated. So we don't have to think of the smell, it was bad. And she said when you woke, it was the worst thing in the world. So bad she was frightened to go to sleep. So my testimony, I love Jesus. He came into my heart. But my testimony, I guess, is let this world never forget what really did happen. It really did happen. And you know, that woman, who probably now has gone home, I pray she's with the Lord. But she never spoke to her husband. She never, and he never spoke to her. And both had been in camps. And I met the boy on the railway station, her son, shook his hand, as if life was normal, you know. And one thing, we hugged, because we were very close. And she told me, it's like when you share something that's got stuck inside, and it's been a living nightmare, and then you meet this person you're not going to see again, and out it comes. And she told me she had never spoken about it, and she was so happy that she had. She hugged me like I was an old friend. Anyway, that's what I would like to say tonight. I've said it. Thank you for your time.